The wind screamed across Frystar 7, a frozen moon where no one survived outside for long. The snow didn't fall softly. It attacked. Sharp ice crystals flew sideways, and the cold was so deep it could stop a man's heart in minutes. Kyle Ward, a human technician, lived alone in Station Delta 9, a small weather outpost near the ice cliffs. He was used to silence, used to being alone. His days were quiet, fixing sensors, tracking storms, drinking recycled water, and listening to old Earth music. Tonight the storm was louder than usual, but over the howl of wind and cracking ice, he heard a knock. Kyle froze. It was impossible. No. One was outside. No one could be. He stood up slowly, placed his thermal gloves on, and walked toward the thick steel door. Bang, bang, bang. 3 more knocks, weak but real. He grabbed his rifle just in case, and pressed the monitor screen near the door. The image was blurry, snowflakes blasting the lens, but he saw a figure, thin, collapsing, and glowing. Without thinking, Kyle hit the unlock switch. The door hissed open, and cold air punched him in the face. The figure fell forward right into his arms. She wasn't human. Her skin was soft blue, almost silver under the lights. Her clothes were torn and covered in frost. Her lips were trembling, and her voice, it was barely a whisper. Human. Please, I'm freezing. Let me in. I'll reward you. Kyle didn't ask questions. He dragged her inside and slammed the door shut. Warmth flooded the chamber. The generator whined louder as it fought to push back the cold. He laid her down on the floor, grabbed 3 heat pads, and pressed them to her chest and arms. Then he wrapped her in his thickest thermal blanket. Her eyes fluttered open, bright violet, glowing slightly. She looked at him and whispered again, "Thank you." Then she passed out. 30 minutes later, she was breathing normally. Kyle sat in the corner watching her. He had never seen an alien like her. Tall, thin, but with a warrior's build. Her fingers had 2 extra joints. Her hair, if it could be called hair, was made of thin, glowing threads. He sipped warm broth from a metal mug and muttered to himself, "Great, first contact with an alien. And she falls into my lap during a blizzard." She woke slowly, eyes blinking at the ceiling. Kyle stepped forward. "You're safe now," he said. "You're inside, warm." She turned her head, wincing. "Storm caught me." "No kidding." She tried to sit up. He helped her. After a moment of silence, she spoke. "My name is Zariah. I escaped." Kyle frowned. "Escaped? From what?" She looked away. "Later. For now. Thank you." He studied her face. She looked tired, but sharp. Dangerous, maybe, but also desperate. He asked the question that had been burning in his mind. "What did you mean? You'll reward me?" She looked him in the eye, her voice steady now. "I meant what I said. If you saved me, I would give you something no other human has ever had." Kyle raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Secrets," she said. "Maps to hidden star systems. Ancient technology. DNA archives from my people. I carry all of it." Kyle blinked. He didn't care much about treasure or glory. But this felt big, still. He didn't show excitement. He just nodded slowly. "You can rest for now. We'll talk when you're warm and clear." Zariah smiled weakly. "You're different, human. Most would have let me die." Kyle looked out the frost-covered window, then back at her. "I don't let people freeze at my door." Outside, the storm howled louder. But inside Station Delta 9, 2 strangers sat in silence. One had risked her life to escape. The other had opened his door to something unknown. Neither knew it yet, but this night would change both their lives forever. The generator hummed. The storm outside raged louder than before, snow slamming the walls like fists. But inside Station Delta 9, the warmth returned, and so did the questions. Zariah sat near, the small heating vent wrapped in Kyle's old thermal blanket. Her skin had changed color. no longer pale silver blue but now pulsing gently with soft light like quiet stars beneath the surface. Kyle watched from the kitchen unit, stirring broth. She hadn't spoken much since waking. She ate slowly, carefully. But her eyes kept scanning the room. Corners, cameras, exits, storage crates. Too calm, too calculating. Kyle had seen that look before, on mercenaries, and on things that ran from them. "You don't look like someone lost in a snowstorm," he said finally. Zariah looked up. "And you don't look like someone who asked too many questions." Kyle raised an eyebrow. "Maybe I'm learning." She stood slowly, pulling the blanket tighter around her. "I was never supposed to be found," she said. "Not by a human. Not by anyone." Kyle crossed his arms. "Funny, because you literally banged on my door and collapsed." She stepped toward one of the power conduits, placing a hand near the panel. "I was supposed to die before they reached me," she said. Softly, that made Kyle stop. "Who?" Zariah didn't answer. Instead, she pressed her palm against the conduit surface. Her skin lit up slightly, as if reacting to the charge inside the wall. Kyle snapped alert. "Hey, what are you doing?" "I'm not damaging it," she said calmly. "I just needed to be sure." "Sure of what?" "That your tech is clean, not connected to their network." Kyle narrowed his eyes. "Whose network?" She turned around. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking. "The ones who made me." That was the moment Kyle knew. She wasn't just a lost traveler. She wasn't just some exotic alien in the wrong place. She was hiding something far bigger and far more dangerous. He walked over and sat on the bench across from her. "Let's make this simple," he said. "You tell me what's going on. I decide whether I kick you back out into the snow." She smiled faintly. "You wouldn't do that." "You sure?" "Yes," she said, "because you opened the door." He hated that she was right. Still, he needed answers. Zariah took a deep breath. "I was born in a lab," she said. "One of many, grown for intelligence, speed, resistance to deep space sickness. I was designed to serve." Kyle blinked. "Serve who?" "A ruling class called the Jandari. They own worlds, empires, science. They call us perfect tools." "And you escaped?" "Yes." Kyle sat back, jaw tight. "You said you'd reward me," he said. "Is that what you meant? Genetic data?" Zariah nodded. "Everything inside me, memories, code, coordinates, was meant to be locked away. Now it's free. And they want it back. They will burn this entire moon to get it." Silence filled the room again. The wind outside howled harder, shaking the metal walls. Kyle stood up. "Get some rest," he said. "You'll need it." She looked up, surprised. "You believe me?" "No," Kyle said. "But I believe you're scared, and I believe whatever you're running from isn't finished yet." That night, while Zariah slept, Kyle checked his outpost's sensors. 3 long-range pings, unregistered signals. Not local. Someone else was in orbit. Waiting. Kyle turned to look at the closed door of the sleeping quarters. A strange alien woman was in his bed, and a shadow war was at his doorstep. He muttered to himself, "I should have never opened that damn door." The next morning, the storm was still screaming, but inside the outpost, something had changed. Zariah stood by the main panel in Kyle's control room, staring at the screen showing 3 blinking dots. "Orbiting ships," she said. "Not Jandari. War cruisers, smaller, stealth class, bounty types." Kyle leaned over her shoulder. "You recognize the signatures?" She nodded. "They're hunters." Kyle ran a hand through his messy hair. "Great. First I rescue a frozen alien girl. Now I'm a target." Zariah turned toward him, her eyes glowing softly. "You opened your door. That means you're part of this now." Kyle narrowed his eyes. "I didn't sign up for any of this." "But you didn't shut the door," she said calmly. "You didn't walk away." She sat down on the metal bench and stared at the floor. "I don't have time to earn your trust," she said. So I'll say it plainly. She looked up. I'm offering you a deal. Kyle crossed his arms. I'm listening. If you help me survive this, I'll give you access to everything I carry. Ancient coordinates, hidden caches, genetic blueprints, biological upgrades, rare technology. Things worth galaxies. He raised an eyebrow. You offering treasure? I'm me offering power. Real power. Things your governments would kill for. Kyle said nothing. Then she added, and if that doesn't interest you, I'll leave after this. You'll never see me again. That last part hit him harder than it should have. He turned to the console, scanned the sensor data, then back to her. Why are you really here? Zariah didn't flinch. My pod was hit. I crashed into your moon. I was supposed to land in open forest, hide, and signal a contact, but the storm changed my course. Kyle stared at her. So this was an accident? No, she said. Survival is never an accident. You were the only warm place for miles. I found you because I had to. Kyle sighed and rubbed his temples. All right. Let's say I help you. Then what? Zariah stood, walking slowly toward him. Then we get out of here alive. And I make sure your kindness is never forgotten. Not by me, not by the stars. Her voice softened. Help me now, and I'll make you a name that even the cold can't erase. Kyle looked at her carefully. He had never cared about fame, never cared about riches. He was just a guy who fixed weather towers and listened to static in the snow. But now, a girl from the stars, engineered and hunted, stood in his outpost promising him everything in exchange for one thing, his help, and something deep in his chest, the part that got buried after too many quiet winters, sparked. Not greed, not fear, but purpose. Kyle turned to the weapons locker. He grabbed his old rifle, checked the battery, and handed Zariah a small sidearm. She looked at him in surprise. No more questions? She asked. He shook his head. No time. He glanced at the window. We've got company coming. In the sky above, the 3 orbiting ships moved into position, and inside Station Delta 9, a human and an alien, once strangers, prepared to fight back. Together. The alarm buzzed once, then again. Then the light on the panel turned red. They were no longer just circling. The hunters were coming down. Kyle loaded his rifle and paced near the main door. Zariah stood quietly near the generator core, her hand pressed over her chest. Her face looked calm, but her eyes, something behind them was cracking. Before we fight, Kyle said, I need to know what they're really after. Zariah didn't speak right away. Then, in a low voice, she said, They're not here to kill me, Kyle. They're here to take what's inside me. Kyle stared. You mean tech? Data? She shook her head. Blood. She moved to the table and rolled up her sleeve. There, under her skin, glowing faintly, was a pattern of veins that didn't look natural. They shimmered with blue light, pulsed in strange rhythms. This isn't normal biology, she said. This is layered code. My blood carries information, living data, encoded into my DNA. Kyle stepped closer, studying her arm. You're a walking hard drive? I'm more than that, she whispered. My blood doesn't just store knowledge, it remembers. She picked up a small knife from Kyle's desk. Before he could stop her, she cut a thin line across her palm. Her blood didn't drip. It floated, like magnetic liquid, and formed small spinning shapes in the air. Then those shapes turned into symbols, alien symbols, glowing, see? She said. Even my wounds speak. Kyle was stunned. You weren't just made to serve, were you? He asked. No, she said. I was made to replace. She looked him in the eyes. The Jandari believed flesh could hold more than metal, that a perfect memory system could be grown, not built. They made us to carry libraries, empires, inside our bodies. Her hands trembled, but then we started thinking for ourselves, and that scared them. Kyle sat down, trying to take it in. All this time, he said slowly, you weren't running because you were dangerous. You were running because you were free. Zariah nodded. And now they want to shut me down. Reset me. Make me silent. Again. Kyle stood up, eyes burning. Then we don't let them touch you. A long silence passed. Zariah slowly sat beside him. You deserve more than this frozen rock, she said. You could leave. You could walk away. Kyle gave her a small smile. Maybe I've finally found something worth staying for. She stared at him, then whispered something he didn't expect. My blood remembers stars, Kyle. But no memory. Feels warmer than your door opening in the snow. Suddenly, the warning lights flashed. Red, red, red. Landing party detected, said the station AI. 2 life forms, 1 mech unit. Zariah stood, her voice sharp again. They're not waiting anymore. Kyle grabbed his coat. Then let's remind them why humans survive on death worlds. Outside, the storm had slowed, but a new storm was walking in, made of armor, greed, and cold metal. They didn't know the truth. They didn't care about the girl's name. They only wanted her blood. But inside the station, 2 souls stood side by side, not soldier and hostage, not hunter and prey, but allies, prepared to fight for the only thing the cold couldn't take. Freedom. The snow had stopped, but that didn't mean peace. It meant the machines could move faster. 3 shapes appeared over the ridge. Tall, dark, sharp. One walked like a soldier. One hovered like a ghost. And the third, he was something else. Larger. Heavier. Wrapped in bone-gray armor with glowing red eyes and no face at all. Zariah saw him on the monitor. She whispered one word. A collector. Kyle tightened his grip on the rifle. What's that supposed to mean? She stepped beside him, eyes locked on the screen. They only send collectors when they don't plan to ask questions. They don't speak. They don't stop. They take what they're ordered to take and destroy the rest. Kyle muttered. Nice company. Zariah didn't laugh. The AI gave its last warning. External armor breach in 90 seconds. Kyle moved. Fast. He slammed the emergency lock on the main door, powered down the outer lights, and set a backup generator to explode on remote trigger. Zariah, he said, you remember that promise? She nodded. Good, he said. Because I'm not dying for a maybe. Outside, the snow cracked under the enemy's boots. The hovering one extended a scanner. The signal locked onto the outpost's biosigns. One voice, robotic and flat, said, Target is inside. Extract primary source. Kill the witness. Inside, Zariah handed Kyle a small glowing stick. What's this? He asked. Portable memory crystal. If they kill me, this holds everything I carry. Kyle shook his head. I don't plan on losing anyone tonight. Then the wall exploded. Not the door. The wall. They came in through the ice. Smoke filled the air. Zariah pulled Kyle behind the console desk just as the collector stepped inside, its arms cracking open to reveal plasma blades. The hovering unit fired. A stun shot missed by inches. Kyle dove, rolled, fired back. The blast hit one of the soldiers, knocking his helmet loose, but the man didn't scream, because he wasn't alive. He was synthetic. Great, Kyle muttered. They sent a full kill team. Zariah grabbed a sharp pipe and jammed it into the floor port, releasing steam across the room. Then she pulled Kyle close and whispered, Listen, there's a back tunnel, old escape shaft. I'll hold them off. You run with the data. No, Kyle said. We leave together. You're not fast enough. I don't care. He tossed her the memory crystal, then stood, unarmed, facing the collector. You want her? Kyle shouted. Come through me. The collector raised its blade. Zariah moved, but not toward the exit, toward the reactor core. She slammed her hand into the emergency override. Core unstable, the AI warned. Explosion in 30 seconds. The enemy paused. Zariah held up a thermal detonator. I'll take everything with me. You'll lose the data forever. The collector stopped, calculated, but Kyle wasn't waiting. He lunged forward, smashing the detonator from her hand. "What are you doing?" she cried. "I'm not letting you die to buy me time," he said. She stared at him, and for the first time her voice cracked. "Why do you care, human?" He looked at her, breathing hard. "Because I opened that door." Then he hit the floor trigger. The side hatch blew open. Snow blasted in. Kyle grabbed her hand, and they ran. Behind them, the backup generator exploded, collapsing half the outpost. The trackers were buried in fire, frost, and broken steel. Far into the frozen woods, Kyle and Zariah dropped behind a fallen tree. Breathing, bleeding, alive. Zariah clutched the memory crystal. Tight Kyle leaned back, looking at the stars above. "Still think your reward's worth all this?" he asked, half smiling. Zariah turned to him slowly. "No. Now I think you are." The forest was silent again, but this silence felt different. Not calm, empty, like the land was holding its breath, waiting to see if the two figures lying in the snow would rise again. Kyle's lips were turning pale. Even through his thermal coat, the cold crept in. His breath came slow. Too slow. Beside him, Zariah fought to keep him awake. She shook him gently. "Don't sleep, not yet." He blinked, trying to focus. "We made it, didn't we?" "Yes," she whispered. "But not far enough." The station was gone. Their supplies were buried. Their enemies might be dead or digging out. The only thing they had now was a broken survival pod hidden beneath an old emergency hatch, half buried in ice, and a flickering heat cell. One. Only enough for one person to last the night. Zariah dragged Kyle across the ice. Her muscles screamed, her fingers bled, but she didn't stop, because for the first time in her life, someone had risked everything for her, and she was not going to let him die for it. The pod door opened with a hiss. Inside, it was cramped and dark, filled with old blankets and a cracked seat. Zariah powered up the emergency light. Kyle collapsed into the corner, coughing. She turned on the heat cell and stared at the display. "Power reserve, 3 hours." She sat beside him and took his hand. "You need to use it," he said weakly. "No," she replied. "You're still warm, still strong." She shook her head. "I was made in a lab. You weren't. You freeze faster." He tried to push the heat unit toward her. She pushed it back. He smiled faintly. "Always the last word, huh?" She smiled too. "That's how survivors talk." Minutes passed. The pod's metal groaned. Outside, the wind picked up again. Inside, the cell glowed faint orange. Between them, barely enough to heat their faces. Zariah leaned against him. Her skin shimmered with warmth she wasn't feeling. She looked at him carefully. "Why didn't you run?" she whispered. Kyle didn't answer at first. Then he said, "Because when you knocked, something inside me woke up." He looked at her. "You asked for warmth, but you gave me more," she whispered. "You stayed." He laughed softly. "Because I'm stubborn." She shook her head. "No, because you're human." The light flickered again. 2 hours left. Zariah gently removed her coat and wrapped it around Kyle. He protested, but she pressed a hand to his chest. "You opened your door," she said, "so let me keep it open too." Outside, ice fell from the trees. Inside, two strangers, now bonded by blood and fire, sat shoulder to shoulder, sharing the last bit of heat left in a forgotten world. And then, a signal blinked on the pod screen. A green pulse. Rescue beacon. Locked. Ship inbound. 27 minutes. Zariah gasped. Kyle sat up straighter. "You set a beacon?" She nodded. "I sent it after we escaped, before I pulled you into the pod." "You planned all this?" he asked. She shook her head. "I just planned not to die." They both laughed. Weak, tired, but alive. As the light outside turned to dawn glow and the frost melted on the pod window, Zariah whispered, "Next time someone knocks at your door." Kyle grinned. "I'm putting up a sign. No aliens, no drama, no death squads." She leaned her head on his shoulder. Maybe one alien allowed? He looked down at her, smiling. Maybe. The rescue ship broke through the clouds like a blade of light. Its engines melted the snow beneath the landing pad, and its hull hissed as it settled near the ruined station. The hatch opened, and warm air spilled out into the frozen morning. Inside, the buried pod Zariah felt it first. The warmth, then the hope, then the realization that they had survived. She turned to Kyle, still half-conscious, his face pale, but his grip strong. "They found us," she said. He opened his eyes slowly. "About time," he muttered. "Was starting to think we'd become popsicles." 2 medical drones floated in, scanning them. Human, severe cold stress, minor internal bleeding, concussion risk. Alien, fatigue, blood pressure low, foreign nanite presence stable. Kyle raised a brow. "You're glowing again." Zariah smiled. "Means I'm healing." They were carried aboard the rescue craft. The interior was warm, glowing with soft amber light. Real beds, real blankets, real food. For the first time in weeks, Kyle let go of the tension in his shoulders and slept. 12 hours later, he woke to find Zariah sitting beside his bed, wrapped in a soft robe, sipping something sweet-smelling. "You made it," he said, hoarsely. She turned, face gentle. "We made it?" She handed him a cup. "This is called Thera root tea. Helps with pain." He drank it slowly. "Tastes like warm grass." "Better than cold silence," she replied. There was a pause. Then Kyle looked at her seriously. "What happens now?" Zariah stood and walked to the viewing window. Beyond the glass, the snowy moon of Frystar 7 faded into the blackness of space. "I've contacted someone I trust," she said. "A syndicate leader from a free world. He can hide us. You'll be safe." Kyle sat up. "And what about you?" She turned to face him. "They'll come again. I know that now." He nodded. "And I'll be there when they do." Her eyes softened. "You don't have to follow me, Kyle. You gave me a choice when no one else would." He stood, walked over and took her hand. "Then let me make one now." The ship docked 3 days later on a lush, hidden jungle planet, Etherian 3. It was quiet, wild, alive. Zariah led Kyle through overgrown trails to a domed sanctuary built of stone and starlight. Here no names were tracked, no blood was tested. Freedom lived in every breath. Over the next weeks they healed. Zariah spoke in secret meetings, sharing the truth of what the Jandari did to her people. Others listened, some angry, some afraid. Kyle rebuilt equipment, reinforced walls, set traps. He didn't speak much in meetings, but everyone trusted him, because they had heard what he did back on Frystar 7. They called him the man who opened the door. And then came the moment they both expected. Message encrypted simple. "We are coming for the code. Surrender her and your people will be spared." Zariah stared at the screen. "This is what I feared," she said. Kyle touched her shoulder. "No. This is what we're ready for." And this time, they weren't alone. They set up defenses. They trained fighters. They taught people how to survive. The cold, how to say no without fear. And when the Jandari scouts finally arrived, they didn't find a scared girl and a quiet technician. They found a fire they couldn't freeze. The attackers didn't last. The villagers fought like they had something to protect. Because now, they did. Their own future. After the final blast, fell silent. Zariah stood in the snow-covered grass, breathing hard. Kyle walked to her side, armor-dented, rifle low. "You all right?" he asked. She smiled, a little blood on her lip. "I've never been more." The others gathered around. Zariah raised her hand. "We are not tools. We are not code. We are not property." She turned to Kyle. "And we are not alone." A cheer rose. And Kyle? He didn't cheer. He just looked at the stars, then at the woman who had knocked on his door that frozen night, and whispered, "You were worth every second." Years later, they sat on a balcony under a sky full of stars. Kyle built small drones, for fun. Zariah taught children how to speak in data songs. Sometimes they fought, sometimes they laughed, but they never forgot the cold, or the choice, or the fire they lit together. Because the greatest warmth in the universe is not a sun, not a reactor, not a blanket. It's the moment you open your door and let someone in.